Paolo Fragemeni. Hey. We'll see if you clap like that when I'm done. Okay, so there are a bunch of things that I'd like to talk about, and I know everybody here really likes JavaScript. I'm going to kind of traverse a great expanse of different things, and hopefully some of them will be enlightening. And the main sort of focus that I want to try to illuminate is a new framework for Node.js. So, how many people here have written a Node.js application? Cool. Okay. So, how many people here have written a Node.js application that has, like, say, 300,000 lines of code or more? Okay, just Alex. But Alex has done it. I don't know what Alex hasn't done. Okay. So, so once your applications start getting more complex, you skin your knees a couple times, and then you realize, like, there's these sort of common problems, and like, you can kind of keep inventing little solutions to try to fix those problems. But we've been running at Nodejitsu. We've been running Node.js in production for like almost 2 years. Like, basically since it came out, we did the really smart thing and just went ahead and like started a business based on it. it was smart. Okay, so this up here, I made this this cool little, like, who in here has made their own like slide? Okay, just one right. Okay, so so this is going to be mind blowing. Watch this. Okay. So, okay. That's it. That's my talk. Okay. So I guess I should probably do this slide really before I jump into this. This is my GitHub. There's some neat projects there. This is my Twitter. I pretty much only tweet about like JavaScript and stuff. So my feed is not very noisy. There's lots of signal in it. Okay. So. So seeing as how there's so many people here who know what's up with Node, I'm going to start talking about this. So we created this framework called Flatiron, and we created it rather than just sort of creating it without any reason. We had a common problem. We had a bunch of common problems to address, but the main one was that because Node is so new, people kind of decided, well, where's the Rails for Node, or where's the framework? There is no framework. So people started bringing over kind of like ideas from other platforms and just sort of like porting them. And like Express is like kind of like that. It's very much like Sinatra. And like so everyone's just kind of bringing over these very sort of older ideas and just trying to make this stuff work in Node because there wasn't anything. Like, and that really hasn't gotten us very far. Like Express is okay, but as far as like a complete solution, there isn't one. So people keep wondering, like, where's the Rails for Node? Well, there should probably never be a Rails for Node because, like, that's not a good idea. It's a monolithic framework. And okay, so a monolithic framework. I have these like sort of points here, like. They're small so that they're hard to read. So monolithic frameworks address like problems. They're easy to work with, and that's great. They use components, but they have to be used all together in the big framework for you to use any of them. They're easy to develop with, but they're really hard to decompose. So what do I mean by decompose? Well, like I said, when I was talking about 300,000 line application, your problem gets more and more complex, and you generally need to augment the framework itself. You can't just, one size doesn't really fit all. After you get into outside the 80-20, it's a trap. I meant to put a picture of the guy, the commander from
Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, thanks. I just lost So the other problem with the monolithic framework, like Rails, is that it's like, you know, we have some JavaScript programmers know about patterns, and so I call it the imposition pattern. It's like, here you go, this is how it's done, which is kind of bullshit. And so the part of the problem with that is that like bigger companies doing really sophisticated things, basically in the enterprise space, kind of look at Ruby on Rails and things like that, and they go, well, that's just never going to work for us. So they don't engage with it. And so, so a solution is a sort of an adaptable framework. So, what do I mean adaptable? Like, you know, it can change. It can be sort of torn apart. It can be put together. It's made of these smaller parts. It's a little bit like Lego. Simplification through independence. Okay, so so what do I mean by that? So what is adaptable? It should be this kind of balance between extensibility and productivity. Like, you know, something with like Node is that it's very close to the middle. You know, you could spend all day kind of tweaking and hacking and building interesting things, and you could, at the end of the day, have nothing except for a kernel that solves part of the bigger problem, right? So an adaptable framework should be something that has lots of things, but they don't impose anything on you. You can use them if you want. They can be sort of given to you in different configurations, and you can take some of those pieces away or add some of those pieces back. And that's like what Flatiron is trying to do. It's trying to not be a one-size-fits-all thing. So, so there's a website for this. And I already have it open. So, so I just did this today. So it's, I don't think that anyone can probably see that. I can hardly see that. It's flatironjs.org. And so the website kind of goes over some of the high-level things that are in this framework. And it explains kind of what they are and how to use them, what sort of things are included. There's URL routing, templating, data management, middleware, plugins, logging, all that stuff. So, so this is the website for that. So, but I'll leave that for you guys to explore. And it's a work in progress too. We're adding more stuff to it, kind of as we speak. So if you have a kind of a framework like this, which is just all components, you need something to kind of tie them all together. You need a little bit of a foundation to stack them on. You can use any of these components individually. For instance, like the routing component will work completely on its own without any of this other stuff. It doesn't need Flatiron whatsoever. And you can use it by itself. Oops, I forgot to turn it off before I started. Does this make sense to anyone?
Well,
Make it a hand. Okay, cool. So patterns. So I keep like mentioning patterns. Patterns are really kind of interesting to me. So you know, a lot of you guys are probably really enthusiastic about JavaScript. You know, there's only so much you can learn about it. You know the good parts and the bad parts, and then what you start doing is you start looking at patterns, right? Because ultimately, it's not just about knowing the nuts and bolts of the language. It's about implementing good ideas well, with ideas that have stood up for a long time. So one of the things that that the really bloated, shitty, frustrating world of Java gave us was actually, there was some really good ideas. There was a lot of minds that spent a lot of time working really hard on solving problems. And as much as you just want to say, well, Java just sucks so much ass, there are like good things that we're kind of buried in there, sort of underneath all of that. I had a slide for the Capital.js talk that I did that had a picture of Java the Hut, and it said Java, so I was trying to draw this like sort of comparison because they sounded alike. It went over really good, but this is, I forgot all my Star Wars stuff for this one. Okay, so, but anyway, so the thing that binds all of these components together is called Broadway. And the pattern that it sort of uses is called dependency injection. Does anybody know dependency injection? This crowd is awesome. Okay, so the problem with that, right, and you probably know it from other languages that you've experienced it with, like, I think Spring does some sort of form of like inversion control. Okay, so it's kind of a horrific thing to think of, all the registration and stuff, but because of JavaScript just doesn't have these requirements, you just don't have like the type registration that you have with these other sort of meta insane programming languages. So it's really easy to do inversion control. So essentially what Broadway gives you is the ability to just sort of expose a really simple API on top of the actual application object. I mean, what's the thing that most people normally do when they go to start a new JavaScript application? They have a top level object. They don't want to clobber the global space, so they have an object, and everything kind of ends up kind of going along with that. So like there's a really simple sort of like interface that, oh, this is cool also. This is all CSS3 transitions. I'm really sort of proud of this. Yes. So there's a really simple contract. It's just a couple of properties and methods.
Is there any way to blow that up at all?
Oh yeah, there is.
Control plus. If I can't see it, I'm afraid no. Much better.
Is that?
You can do Control 0 and then do the or Command 0 and then Control like scroll, and it'll like do a native zoom. Yeah, like that. So if you do Command 0 first.
How's that?
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
I'm good. I have great vision.
Okay. It works for Alex. Okay. So there's like a really simple contract that goes along with this. Basically, you name your plugin. You define what happens when you attach it, when you detach it, and then when you initialize it. Really, really, really incredibly simple. You don't even have to use this if you want to use this. If you want to use Flatiron. So that's not really going to work. Okay, it's going to have to be a tiny bit smaller. Okay, but I'll point at the words, and then I'll say them. So one of the really cool things about this is like, about Flatiron in general is that, and me and Guillermo Rausch from Learn Boost and a couple other people, including the people that worked on GWT, are kind of like sort of calling JavaScript code that runs on the server and runs on the client, calling it isomorphic. Rai, the creator of Node, had a little bit of a problem with that because he's like a serious math nerd and math geek. I don't know. Anyways, so he didn't really like that very much because that's a whole different space, right? Isomorphic. But the dictionary definition of this word means that it behaves similar in different environments. So whatever you want to call it, that's what Flatiron is doing. The majority of the code can be run in the browser and in Node. So with Broadway, giving you these contracts, or this contract, you can separate the implementation and just abide to the contract, and then the majority of your code can run in either environment. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just defining a function that's immediately executed, and it determines whether or not we're in Node or if we're in the browser. And then it defines our contract here, does the attach definition, the initialization definition. I didn't do the detach definition because you get the idea. But so now when Broadway picks this up, you can run it in the browser on the server, and it's not really aware of where it is or what's running it. So so that's Broadway. That's one of the pieces in Flatiron. Okay. So there's more components. That's the sort of binding piece. And the components are, well, probably things that you're already very familiar with. So, routing. So, before we started working on Flatiron, I had a project called Sugar Skull, which was just a browser. It was actually the reason why I started working on it was because I was using Backbone for something. I think I was using Backbone for something. And anyways, Backbone had this concept of routes. Basically, like when a URL is when the hash changes in URL, it maps to a function. Which is actually really kind of naive, the implementation. It really falls short, like when you start doing anything more than just a function gets called when a URL is changed. And so so the way that I addressed that, Backbone is basically it maps a single hash route to a function. And so it's kind of, the reason why I say it's naive is because it gets, you often want to associate multiple units of logic with a single route. And you also might want to execute those units of logic at different times. Because a hash route is essentially an event. It's something that can happen before, during, or after, right? So so with Director, kind of gives us the ability to attach these on and after and before events, and then also associate multiple or single functions with the actual routes. And it allows us to define the routes in sort of a nested way, so that way the routes don't actually become like really redundant. Like if you've ever used what's it called, Backbone, you notice like the routes start becoming visibly redundant. But using an object literal, you just quote the value of the key, and then add a slash in it, and all of a sudden you have a really clever way of defining routes. So in this example, like authors can have an event associated with it as well as subroutes from it. So so that's kind of how that's defined. Yeah.
How do you handle dynamic routes, like author,
like ad hoc routing?
or like a book/book ID or whatever?
Oh, so so actually, yeah. So let me actually open up the GitHub for this. Or actually, so the GitHub accounts for all these projects, or the GitHub repos for all these projects have like really pretty substantial documentation, kind of explain all of this stuff. So so the question was, how do you handle like dynamic routes? So I'll make this bigger, I promise.
Should just be
So so there's I'm looking for a better. Yeah. Okay. So actually, that's not a very good example. Okay. So there's two kinds of like possible dynamic kind of routes that you could do. So we define the router. The constructor takes an object literal that is the routing table, and the actual the key. It'll parse the key and it'll say like, okay, what's in the key? Is this supposed to be like a wildcard, like just a named wildcard? Like it could be color. And so if I enter a route that's /dog/yellow, then it'll execute on this function that's related to this particular wildcard, and then it'll actually tell me what the user or what the item in the hash was. But then you can also do regular expressions, and you can do like stars.
Is the name of that parameter used at all, or is that just to help you read it?
Where's that?
You have colon color.
Yeah.
Is that name actually passed to something, or?
So this is like this is arbitrary. It's like the first item that was in the route.
But the order is all that matters, right?
Yeah, the order is what's important. And then regexes are supported too. And the different capture groups from the regexes will be returned in the order that they were actually captured. So anyways, the problem that this solves is it tries to capture all of the potential places that you would want to interject some form of logic at the point in time where a route changes. And so Backbone doesn't really do that. But that was kind of the initial motivation for this. But it's kind of like evolved since then. We really liked this sort of pattern or this style of having an object literal that could serve as a routing table that could sort of help prevent getting really redundant when you're defining routes and stuff. So we took that over to Node, and so when you instantiate this in Node, you can use it. It looks a lot like Express because it also supports ad hoc routing, so it's really similar. But it still gives you that ability to define a routing table, kind of like you do on the client side. So that way a lot of your code will look the same on the server as it does on the client. So minimal ramp-up time understanding the differences between routing on the client and routing on the server. But I forgot to say that you guys can ask me like as many questions as you want. And no question is a dumb question.
So is this basically Spring MVC, but in Node?
No. No trolling.
Looks
I'm just kidding.
Spring MVC.
No. It's so. I guess I guess the MVC model, like traditionally, would specifically say, okay, here's your model, here's your view, here, and Flatiron doesn't really do that. It's like if you want to use like the router and the middleware together, like you could do MVVP, or you could do MVP, or you could do any sort of order of like combination or whatever that you wanted. It kind of goes out of its way to make sure that it doesn't impose a particular pattern on how you develop. So that's, yeah. Okay. So that's, yeah. Oh, and there's some other cool functions too, like you can stop recursing from a route, you can like, yeah, you can do some neat stuff with this. So, and all of this stuff is on Flatiron, GitHub/Flatiron. Okay, so back to the slides. Did I see someone's hand go? Yeah, so if you want to create like REST APIs, or if you want to do single page apps, that's a cool library from Flatiron. Okay, so this is another kind of interesting one, and it's one where there's like a fight that could break out, I guess, maybe about this one. Okay, so I created a library called Weld a while ago. It was really stupid. It got a bunch of followers on GitHub, but it was a really bad idea because I used to be a contributor to a project called JSDOM, which was basically an implementation of the document object model in Node. And I thought this was like the best fucking idea. I was like, okay, great. We have the DOM on the server. So everything can be done on the server like it's done on the client. We should just try to make it the same. So that way there's no real discrepancy. It's easy to ramp up. It's easy to understand what the developer is doing. You can use DOM APIs, they're well known. Okay, but that turned out to be a really bad idea. Mostly because, so Tempvar, Elijah and Sua, the guy who's working on it is like an incredible hacker. But the problem is there's basically like one guy working on this thing. And it's really buggy. It's got like this memory leak that no one can figure out. And like, I really want that project to be finished, but the main deficiency of this project is that it's really slow. So in order to start this thing up and have it like, you know, traverse its DOM, because it's really incredibly slow. So DOM templating on the server wasn't a good idea. It's okay on the client. Like some templating libraries on the client, they'll do DOM templating, but it's really slow. Mustache uses this DSL, the little curly braces. Everybody who's Mustache, yeah, it's simple and it's fast. The problem is, and like, so there's a little tab down there, what the fuck? So like the problem with DSLs, does anyone use Django? Django, okay. So, I mean, Django templates, they're kind of like, I don't know, JSPs or whatever. You have these little indicators here, you know, that say, okay, this is a variable inside here. And it gets kind of intertwined throughout the markup, and pretty soon you have like markup that looks like this. I've seen like similar mustaches, and I've seen like JSPs that are just fucking atrocious. And that's really bad because your markup ends up being unportable. It's not portable anymore. You know, if you have a designer that wants to look at your markup after you've done this to it, you basically put them out of work. Like, they're going to look at it and spin their wheels forever, trying to figure out how not to break it by like moving this like for loop or you know, whatever. So, and even in Mustache, it's logicless, but you have this stuff intertwined in your markup. Alex is sitting there hating me, going, "What? Mustache is awesome. Fuck you." Okay, so so what Plates tries to do is it just says just leave the HTML the way it is. Just don't fuck with the HTML. Just leave it as it is. And don't do anything with the data either. Just leave it alone. Let it be what it is, right? And it goes through this series of like trying to apply like the most reasonable kind of outcome, right? Like data keys are unique, and so are IDs in your HTML. So it tries to converge at that point, and tries to say map this data to that data, or this test to that test, and then suddenly the output of that is markup that has that value in it. It's really simple. Okay, so at this point you probably have like a bunch of like case like scenarios where like, well, what if? But okay, but it can be more complicated than that, right? Yes, it totally can. So we'll go back to here. Wait, go to here. We'll go to here. But before I like start talking about this, somebody had a question.
I guess you're gonna
Okay.
address part of it, not have anything.
Okay. Okay, so DSLs suck. The DOM is slow. You want to promote the separation of concerns. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. The simple case, right? We just looked at that. But what if you have explicit instructions? Like, say that I want to map a class to a piece of data. Okay, well that's really simple. Just use some JavaScript to do it. If you want to iterate over that, just use some JavaScript. If you want to, do something complicated, like let's say that I want to, with this HTML, I can create this sort of map object which says like the href where it's just a /. I want to insert this new URL, which is this data. So then it would insert that into the markup, and I never have to touch either the data or the markup. I just recently somebody was pointing me at Knockout.js, which was like this framework, and they were like, well, this is like unobtrusive, right? Like it's just data and markup like this. And so I got into it and looked at it. And it's actually a reverse DSL. It's kind of like the sort of antithesis of Mustache. It's like it puts the DSL inside the JSON, which is fucking revolting in my opinion. But it's a flashy website, though. They've got a really flashy website. So like, okay, so there's more. This does like a bunch of crazy shit. So like, if I have like some arbitrary, data, attribute, I can, where it is var use image URL as the source. So I can inject the new value into some other arbitrary attribute. And there's a bunch of these different things, and the documentation is not completely complete yet, but yeah, okay. So that's another one of the Flatiron components. That's the yes.
Are there like precompiled templates that you can do, or do you need to set up all your markup?
So you can. So the way I've been using it is, and this is an open source project. So like, if you have an idea, you can just like do a pull request.
I'm saying that sounds really hard to implement.
So the way I've been doing it is, like in Node, is like I'll create a HTML template file, and I'll grab that, and then I'll use that against my data, and then I'll output that, and I'll generally cache it in the application.
Sure. What about client-side templates though? It wouldn't be as applicable for that, or?
Well, you can still use it.
You do it, but
yeah. So what I've been doing on the client is I'll take a section, and I'll give it a class, a template class, and it'll just be hidden. And then when it's going to actually do the templating, it grabs that element, and then it applies the data to it, and then spits it out as a new chunk of markup. And you can save the map because it's just an object, right? You create the map, and then once you apply it, you can reuse that map, or it'll cache the actual template that you made. So when you go to do it again, it'll already have it. I benchmarked this with Benchmark.js, I think it is.
JDBs.
Yeah, and it's marginally faster than Mustache, like in the simple cases. When you get into like really sophisticated cases, like where you're trying to where you have a map that has like 30 different crazy things in it, it gets slower. It's definitely not as fast as Mustache in the really complex cases.
And then like Handlebars has like all the AST stuff to where you can get it even faster.
Yeah.
What about like composable templates and stuff?
Well, the one thing I want to mention too is that it's really like, it's a matter of, like if you decided to use something like this, it's really a matter of making a choice between how much do you care about keeping your markup pristine? Do you want it to stay just markup? Or is it okay if you go ahead and add all the extra stuff in it? And like, if you go ahead and add all the extra stuff, I think if you're dealing with large templates, it's going to be faster. Although I was recently told by Michael Rogers that speed is negligible and you should be caching anyways, so fuck it.
What about like multiple templates, so like sub-templates and things like that? you just need to like write
Do a
your own
jump.
injector? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, that's what I've been doing. I think it would be kind of cool maybe to have some convenience functions associated with that, but I haven't written them yet. But they could be easily be added.
Cool.
So if you want to pull it,
Yeah.
I'd love to have it from you. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So are you gonna switch blacksmith to use plates, or because it's got welding?
Oh yeah. So blacksmith is pretty awesome. That's another one of the things in Flatiron. But blacksmith was being written before I came up with plates. So stuff happened a little bit out of order. But blacksmith is really great. I'm actually, I don't have that in my slides, but I'll talk about it a little bit. So blacksmith is a static site generator. So like if you care about SEO and like you need performance and stuff like that for very large informational sites, it's really cool. How are we doing on time? Do we need a break or we're almost
So
done?
8:24.
8:24. Okay. Well, when were we doing a break?
When do you want to? Are you going to do the whole thing all the way through?
Well, I wanted to give people the opportunity to you know, either do like a bathroom thing and all
All right.
that.
Yeah, we can take a 5-minute break.
Everyone likes beer.
Yeah, and fill up your beer. Yeah, 5 break. It's fine. Yeah.